The little post office at Willow Creek. The post office at Willow Creek was not much to look at from the outside, a single small brick building with a faded flag out front and a hand-painted sign above the door that had needed touching up for at least a decade. But everyone in the valley agreed it was somehow exactly the right size for the town it served. Cora had run it for 11 years now, ever since her mother retired, and she had long since come to believe, the way her mother always had before her, that the little office came properly alive only on rainy days, when the whole valley seemed to slow down enough to remember it was there. Today had carried the particular grey stillness of an afternoon building toward rain since well before noon, the sky pressing low over the surrounding hills, and Cora had felt it coming the way she always did, some old instinct passed down along with the post office itself. She'd spent the morning readying the little building for it, without quite admitting to herself what she was doing, restocking the small basket of complimentary peppermints by the counter, setting a kettle on the hot plate in the back room, propping the door's old brass bell a little looser so it would ring more readily for anyone hurrying in out of the wet. By early afternoon, the first drops had begun tapping against the tall front windows, hesitant and scattered at first, and Cora paused in the middle of sorting the day's incoming mail to watch them fall, feeling the same small anticipatory lift she always felt at the start of a proper rain. The little office around her held its usual comfortable order, brass mailboxes lining one whole wall, a worn wooden counter separating her small work area from the public floor, a single wobbly table by the window where people sometimes sat to write out a form or address an envelope they'd forgotten to prepare at home. The rain thickened steadily through the early afternoon, settling into a full, unhurried rhythm against the glass, and Cora moved through her usual rainy day rituals with the same practiced calm she always carried on days like this, turning on the small radio behind the counter to its familiar low murmur, lighting the little lamp on the wobbly table even though the office still had a few good hours of grey daylight left, setting out a second mug beside the kettle, more out of habit than any real expectation that someone might actually linger long enough to share it. The valley outside had gone a deep saturated green in the fading light, the hills softening into grey smudges behind curtains of falling water, and Cora stood a moment at the window, watching it, feeling the particular hush that always settled over Willow Creek in the first real minutes of a rain, the birds gone quiet, the whole small town seeming to lean in and wait. The old brass bell rang for the first time a little after 1, and Mr. Delacroix came in shaking his umbrella carefully on the mat, the way he always did, making his way straight to his usual mailbox to collect whatever had arrived, though everyone in town knew perfectly well he came in mostly for the short conversation that inevitably followed. He lingered by the counter a while, chatting easily with Cora about the state of his garden after all this rain, in no particular hurry to head back out into the weather. More townsfolk trickled in as the afternoon wore on, each arrival announced by the brass bell's familiar chime, each one greeted the way Cora greeted most people who stepped into her small office, with an easy warmth that made no particular distinction between the ones mailing a single postcard and the ones handling some complicated parcel bound for the other side of the country. There was old Mrs. Fenwick, who came in every rainy Thursday to mail a letter to her grandson away at university, always pausing at the wobbly table to add one more line before sealing the envelope, insisting the extra minute of thought always improved the letter considerably. There was young Sam Okonkwo delivering the valley's mail on his bicycle despite the weather, who ducked in dripping and cheerful to warm up with a quick cup of tea before heading back out on his round. The little office filled slowly but steadily through the afternoon, never crowded exactly, but pleasantly full of quiet movement and low conversation, the gentle murmur of the radio mixing easily with the rain's steady percussion against the window, and the occasional soft chime of the bell announcing someone new ducking in out of the wet. Cora moved between the counter and the mailboxes with the unhurried efficiency of someone entirely at home in her own small brick kingdom, weighing parcels, selling stamps, pausing here and there to answer a question about postage rates or simply to trade a few words about the weather.
This, she often thought on afternoons exactly like this one, was the whole reason she'd never once regretted staying in Willow Creek to take over the post office from her mother, despite the long, quiet hours and the modest, steady pace of small-town postal work. There was something deeply satisfying about being the one small fixed point through which the whole valley's letters and packages and small daily connections to the wider world all eventually passed, rain or shine. It was while reorganizing a drawer of spare stamps behind the counter that Cora's hand brushed against something tucked far back in the corner, behind a box of old rubber date stamps she rarely used anymore. She drew it out carefully and found a small, cloth-bound ledger, its cover faded to a soft, indeterminate brown, clearly her mother's, clearly forgotten back there for years, tucked away and never quite gotten around to being properly sorted. She opened it carefully, standing there behind the counter while the rain kept its steady rhythm against the glass, and found her mother's familiar looping handwriting filling page after page, not official postal records, but something closer to a private log, small notes about townsfolk and their letters, who was waiting anxiously for word from a son overseas, who had finally received the acceptance letter they'd been hoping for, each entry brief but warm, the record of a woman who had clearly understood that a post office carried far more than paper. Near the very back, tucked between two blank pages, Cora found a folded note in the same looping hand, addressed simply, "To whoever runs this office after me." She unfolded it slowly, feeling something warm and unexpected rise in her chest, and read her mother's words for what she realized with a small jolt must have been the very first time. A short, plainly written note explaining that the post office had never really been about the mail itself, not entirely, but about being the one place in town where people could count on someone remembering their name and asking after their family, rain or shine, letter or no letter. "The rain days bring everyone in eventually," the note ended. "Let them stay and talk a while. Half of what this job is for isn't in any handbook." Cora read it twice, eyes stinging faintly, before folding it carefully back along its original crease and tucking it into her cardigan pocket, deciding it would stay there now, close at hand, on every rainy afternoon from here forward. The afternoon wore on unhurried, the rain never once threatening to let up, and Cora found herself falling into the particular easy rhythm that only ever showed up on days exactly like this one, a rhythm built less around busyness and more around simple, steady presence, moving between counter and mailboxes, trading a few quiet words with whoever happened to be lingering nearby, letting the office's low, warm hum carry everyone gently along together. A young woman came in sometime around 3, soaked through despite an umbrella clearly not built for this kind of downpour, clutching a thick envelope with obvious nervousness. Cora recognized the particular look easily enough after 11 years in the business, the careful, hopeful handling of something that mattered a great deal to the person carrying it, and left her be a while, sorting nearby mail, until the young woman finally admitted, a little sheepishly, that it was a graduate school application, the deadline looming, and she'd walked the whole way from the far end of the valley rather than risk it getting lost anywhere else. Cora weighed it carefully, double-checked the postage twice over, and sent her off with the particular reassurance only a postmaster with 11 years of experience could properly offer. Mrs. Fenwick lingered near the wobbly table well past her usual quarter hour, adding line after line to her letter with obvious care, occasionally reading a sentence aloud to Sam, who had settled into a chair nearby to finish his tea before continuing his round. Cora listened with half an ear as she worked, comforted by the low, familiar murmur of it, the particular music of a small office full of people who had, in one unhurried, rainy afternoon after another, slowly become something like a loose, easy community around her counter. Outside, the rain had thickened further as the afternoon aged towards evening, the sky gone from pale grey to something deeper and more textured, the office's front window fogged properly now at its edges, the warm light inside pushing back gently against the darkening sodden valley beyond the glass. Cora felt, watching it all, the particular contentment that only ever arrived on days like this one. A room full of people she genuinely cared about, each carrying some small piece of their life through her small brick office, trusting her, in one way or another, to help it along on its way. She began restocking the postcard rack a little before 5, moving cards with practiced hands, while half listening to Mr. Delacroix recount, for what was probably the dozenth time, the exact details of a particularly troublesome tomato plant, the story growing a little more elaborate with each retelling, though nobody seemed to mind. Reaching for a fresh box of postcards on the high shelf, her fingers found instead a small, faded photograph tucked behind a stack of old postal forms, curling slightly at the corners, clearly forgotten there for years. It showed her mother, decades younger, standing behind this same counter on some long-ago rainy afternoon, apron dusted with the fine grey of old paper, laughing at whoever held the camera, the office behind her recognizably the same and yet subtly different. Different mailboxes, a different colour on the far wall, but the same warm, crowded, rain-soaked feeling filling every corner of the frame. On the back, in the same looping hand as the ledger, someone had written only "Best kind of day, full office, bad weather, everyone's letters finding their way home anyway." Cora propped the photograph against the register, facing out into the room, deciding it belonged there now among the office's other small, quiet treasures, and went back to her restocking with a private smile, feeling, not for the first time this particular afternoon, the strange comfort of standing in exactly the same spot her mother once had, on a day that felt, in all the ways that mattered, remarkably similar. Sometime around 6, the rain thickened further still, arriving in earnest now, drumming hard against the front window with a fuller, more insistent rhythm than it had carried all afternoon. A low roll of thunder moved somewhere beyond the hills, distant but unmistakable, and the handful of townsfolk still lingering glanced up at once, the way people who have weathered plenty of storms together tend to, sharing a brief knowing look before returning easily to their unhurried conversations. The wind picked up outside, rattling the old flagpole out front against its metal fittings, and a fresh gust drove the rain sideways against the glass hard enough that the postcard rack near the window trembled faintly on its stand. Cora moved to check the door was properly latched against the wind, an old habit from 11 years of exactly these evenings, and found, glancing out at the street, that it had gone nearly empty now, except for the occasional hurried figure dashing between doorways, shoulders hunched against the downpour. settling in for the night by the look of it," Mr. Delacroix observed, peering out at the darkening street with his mail already tucked carefully under one arm, and Cora nodded, already moving toward the back to check the sorting room's window was sealed tight against the damp, feeling the particular satisfaction of a keeper whose small brick kingdom was once again exactly where everyone wanted to linger on a night like this. She kept the office open a little later than usual, official closing time coming and going without much ceremony, since nobody currently inside seemed in any particular hurry to brave the storm, and Cora had long ago decided that a full office on a proper rainy evening was worth far more than the modest savings of closing on schedule. She refilled the kettle, offered a fresh cup of tea to anyone who wanted one, and let the evening simply continue at its own unhurried pace, the rain drumming steady and full against the window, the warm hum of quiet conversation filling every corner of the small room. The young woman with her graduate application had left hours earlier, considerably lighter for having safely handed it off, and Mrs. Fenwick finally sealed her letter sometime around 7, pausing at the door to thank Cora the same quiet way she always did, adding this time a small unexpected comment about how much the office had always reminded her of writing letters to her own late husband decades ago, though she never did explain further, simply nodding once and stepping out into the wet dark with her collar turned up against the wind. Sam finally finished his round and his tea both around the same time, gathering his bicycle from just inside the door with obvious reluctance to face the rain again, and Mr. Delacroix lingered a while longer, the two of them trading a few last easy words about the weather before Sam finally pushed off into the downpour, waving cheerfully over his shoulder as he went. Mr. Delacroix made his own unhurried goodnight a little after 8, the office slowly emptying out the way it always eventually did, no matter how good the storm outside, and Cora stood a moment in the sudden quiet once the door had finally properly closed behind her, listening to the rain's steady rhythm against the window, the low creak of the old building settling around her, the particular hush that only ever arrived after a full warm evening had wound gently down to its close. She began the small last tasks of closing with the same unhurried care she carried through everything else, locking the mailboxes, banking the little lamp on the wobbly table, sweeping the floor slowly in the low light, letting the day's accumulated small satisfactions settle properly into her tired shoulders. With the office finally closed and locked, Cora made her way up the narrow back staircase to the small flat above, the same one her mother had lived in for decades before her, its low ceilings and creaking floorboards familiar enough by now to navigate easily even in the dim evening light. The rain sounded different up here, closer somehow, drumming directly against the roof rather than filtered through the office's tall windows below, a fuller, more intimate sound that Cora had come, over the years, to find deeply comforting. She made herself a small pot of tea, carrying it to the worn armchair by her own small window, and sat a while simply watching the rain streak down the glass, feeling the particular satisfaction of a long, full day finally winding down toward its close. Her mother's ledger and the small folded note sat on the table beside her, along with the old photograph she'd found tucked behind the postal forms, and she found herself paging through the ledger again, slowly, in no hurry at all, reading her mother's careful handwritten notes by the low lamplight. Curiously, near the middle of the ledger, tucked between an entry about a farmer waiting on seed catalogues and one about a young couple's long-awaited wedding invitations finally arriving, Cora found another folded note she hadn't noticed earlier, shorter than the first, written in the same looping hand. It read simply,
Some days this little office does more good than any of us realize. You never know who needed someone to remember their name today. Keep the door open as long as you reasonably can. Cora read it twice, thinking of the young woman's nervous graduate application, of Mrs. Fenwick's small, unexpected comment about her late husband, of Sam and Mr. Delacroix's easy, unhurried conversation stretching long into the evening, and felt, reading it, a quiet certainty that her mother had somehow already known exactly the kind of evening this would turn out to be, decades before it happened. She set the ledger down carefully, tea cooling now to its perfect drinking temperature, and let herself simply sit a while longer, listening to the rain's steady rhythm against the roof, feeling entirely, uncomplicatedly grateful for the small, warm kingdom she'd been trusted with, for the mother who had built its rhythms long before her, for the particular quiet purpose of keeping a door open on nights exactly like this one. The storm outside showed no sign of easing as the evening wore fully into night, the wind picking up occasionally to rattle the old window panes in their frames, the rain settling into that full, unhurried percussion that Cora loved best of all, steady and constant enough to eventually stop noticing as separate from silence itself. She finished her tea slowly, refilling it once from the small pot, and let her thoughts wander the way they always did on nights like this, unhurried, drifting easily between memory and simple present comfort. She thought of her mother, retired now to a small cottage on the far side of the valley, and found herself wondering, not for the first time, whether her mother still watched the rain the same particular way from her cottage window, still felt that same small anticipatory lift at the first scattered drops against the glass. She thought too of her own eventual successor, years or decades from now perhaps, finding this same ledger tucked behind some future version of the old rubber date stamps, adding their own small careful notes in the margins, leaving their own folded note near the back for whoever came next. The thought didn't feel sad so much as it felt right, part of some much longer, gentler story that the little post office itself seemed to be quietly telling, one rainy afternoon at a time. Eventually, tea finished and the evening's last small satisfactions properly settled, Cora arose to prepare for sleep, moving through the familiar small tasks of the flat with the same unhurried care she carried through everything else on nights like this. She changed to soft, worn sleep clothes, brushed her teeth at the small basin, and paused a moment at her own tired reflection in the narrow mirror above it, thinking, as she often did up here, that she looked a little more like her mother each year, something about the particular tiredness the office always left behind, a good tiredness, the kind earned rather than simply endured. She set the ledger and the small folded notes carefully on her bedside table, along with the old photograph propped against the lamp, and climbed into bed with the rain's steady rhythm filling the small dark room, drumming against the roof directly above her in a sound she had long ago stopped finding anything but deeply comforting. The heavier blanket at the foot of the bed went mostly unneeded tonight, the flat holding its warmth well against the storm outside, though she pulled it part way up regardless, out of habit more than actual need. She lay a while listening, the way she always did on nights exactly like this one, to the rain against the roof, to the old building's familiar creaks as it settled around her, to the distant, occasional rumble of thunder moving further off now, out beyond the edge of the valley. Downstairs, she knew without needing to check, the office sat quiet and dark, mailboxes locked,
the little lamp on the wobbly table dimmed for the night, waiting for morning the way it always was, the way it had been waiting in one form or another for decades before she'd ever taken it over herself. The mind does a curious thing on the edge of sleep, especially after a long, full day spent quietly among people and their small daily connections to each other. It stops sorting so carefully between what is remembered and what is only imagined, and lets the two drift together into something softer than either. Cora lay with eyes closed, not quite asleep, thoughts moving without any real steering, the way a letter moves slowly through the postal system, carried along by whatever current happened to be running beneath it. She thought she heard, very faintly beneath the rain, her mother's voice again. Not words exactly, just the warm, practical cadence she'd always used, explaining some small detail of the trade, patient and unhurried, the specific tone reserved for teaching someone the parts of the job that never quite made it into any handbook. She thought of the photograph propped against her lamp, her mother decades younger, laughing behind this same counter on some long-ago rainy afternoon, and in her half-dream, the two evenings seemed to blur gently together, her mother's crowded, storm-soaked office folding easily into her own, as though the same warm, careful attention had simply been passing uninterrupted across all these years. The wind moved against the window, and in her drifting mind it became, briefly, the sound of the old brass bell over the office door, ringing for one more late arrival ducking in out of the rain, before she remembered, in the loose logic of half-sleep, that the office was closed now, dark and quiet below, and that the sound was only wind, only rain, only the old building settling into its own long night, the same as she was settling into hers. Somewhere below, she imagined she could feel the whole small office breathing gently around her, full of the accumulated warmth of everyone who had passed through it that day. Mrs. Fenwick's letter to her grandson, the young woman's graduate application, Sam's dripping cheerfulness, Mr. Delacroix's tomato stories, all of it settled now into the walls themselves, the way good days always seem to, and Cora felt herself smile faintly in the dark, eyes still closed, feeling entirely, weightlessly content. Tomorrow existed only in the vaguest terms now, the mail that would need sorting, the postcards that would need restocking, whatever weather the morning happened to bring, rain or shine, quiet or full. None of it pulled her the way tasks so often did on ordinary days, demanding speed, demanding urgency. Tonight, everything could simply wait its turn, unhurried, the way the rain was unhurried, the way the little post office itself had always been unhurried, patient through 11 years and decades more before that, waiting faithfully for whoever needed somewhere warm to sit out their particular storm. The rain went on, the old building held, the way it had always held, through this storm and every storm before it, and somewhere beneath all that steady sound, Cora's breathing slowed further still and further until it too had settled fully into the storm's own patient rhythm, indistinguishable from the rest. Later, though later meant very little on a night like this, stretched and formless as it was, the rain eased by slow degrees, its steady percussion softening into something closer to a whisper against the roof, gentle now, as though the storm itself had simply grown tired and settled in to rest alongside everyone it had passed over that night. Downstairs, the office sat dark and quiet, mailboxes locked and waiting, the ledger's careful notes and the small folded messages resting patiently on their shelf, ready for whoever needed them next, tonight or years from now.
The old brass bell above the door hung still and silent, saving its ring for whoever the morning happened to bring in out of the rain. Cora slept the particular deep, dreamless sleep that only comes after a long, full day spent in good company, the kind of sleep the body simply surrenders to without negotiation, without the usual restless surfacing that so often interrupts an ordinary night. Her breathing was slow and even, one hand resting near the small stack of her mother's letters and notes on the bedside table, the blanket drawn up loosely against the last of the storm's lingering chill. If she dreamed, the dreams left no mark on her sleeping face, no furrow of worry, no small, restless movement, only the occasional soft exhale, the occasional shift of a shoulder settling deeper into the pillow, the unmistakable stillness of someone entirely, thoroughly at rest after a day well spent. The old building, for its part, seemed to settle too, its familiar creaks growing quieter as the night wore fully into its deepest hours, the rain outside continuing its gentle, unhurried rhythm against the roof, patient and constant, asking nothing of the sleeping valley below, except that it simply let the water fall. Somewhere out past the rooftops, the storm moved slowly on toward the next valley over, carrying its low, steady voice away into some other night, some other small brick building perhaps, waiting, the way Cora's always had, for whoever needed somewhere dry to sit until it passed. Toward dawn, the rain thinned at last to something barely more than mist, drifting low across the valley outside rather than falling from any clear direction. And the light that crept over the surrounding hills came the color of a dove's wing, pale and soft-edged, unhurried in the way all light seems to be after a long night of storm. Cora woke slowly, the way mornings after a good rain always seemed to arrive, without any sharp edge to the transition, simply drifting up out of sleep, the way sleep itself had arrived hours before, layer by gentle layer. For a while, she lay still, listening to the hush that had replaced the night's noise. No more wind against the glass, no more thunder rolling somewhere beyond the hills, only the faint, companionable drip of rainwater finding its way off the eaves outside, and beneath it, somewhere close, the small, industrious chatter of a sparrow that had apparently decided the storm was over long before the sky had quite agreed. She rose without hurrying, dressed simply, and made her way down the narrow back staircase to the office below, the smell of yesterday's rain still lingering faintly in the cool morning air, mixing now with the clean, rain-washed scent drifting in from the street outside as she unlocked the front door and propped it open to let the morning in properly. The street outside looked washed entirely clean, puddles catching the pale early light in scattered silver patches, the old cobblestones dark and glossy where the rain had settled into every crack and seam. A few early risers moved past on their way to the mill, nodding a familiar good morning as they passed the office's freshly opened door, and Cora nodded back, feeling the particular satisfaction of a keeper standing at the threshold of her own small brick kingdom, ready once again for whatever the day happened to bring. She began sorting the morning's incoming mail with the same unhurried care she always used,
the little radio working through its familiar low murmur behind her, and propped the old photograph of her mother up on the counter where it would stay from now on, facing out into the room, keeping its own quiet watch over whoever came through the door next. Mr. Delacroix was the first customer in, shaking the last of the morning's dampness off his coat, making his way straight to his usual mailbox the way he always did, and Cora handed him his mail without needing to check, the way she always had, the way, she suspected, her mother had handed it to him for years before that. "Good rain last night," he said, the way he sometimes did, more observation than conversation, and Cora smiled, one hand brushing briefly over the small, folded note still tucked in her cardigan pocket. "The best kind," she agreed, and meant it entirely, already looking forward in some small, unhurried corner of her mind to whichever storm happened to roll through next, and all the quiet, ordinary good it would surely bring with it. That, she thought, wiping down the counter one more unhurried time before the morning's small crowd began properly arriving, had really all the little post office had ever asked of her: to keep the door open, to remember everyone's name, and to let people stay exactly as long as they needed, storm or shine, and trust that the rain, whenever it came, would bring exactly the right people in out of it. Outside, the last of the morning mist lifted slowly off the valley, and the old brass bell above the door rang again, bright and familiar, announcing the day's next arrival, Mrs. Fenwick, a little early for her usual Thursday visit, shaking a damp umbrella out on the mat, exactly the way Mr. Delacroix always did, smiling at the small coincidence of it as she made her way toward the wobbly table to check whether any word had come yet from her grandson. The little post office, waiting patiently as it always had, opened itself up once more to whatever the weather chose to bring, warm and unhurried, and exactly as full in its own quiet way as it needed to be.